Abandoned by her groom, a cowboy whispered, "Your future belongs to me now." She reached up to adjust the veil, a little nervous but mostly filled with joy. Today was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. Months of planning, countless small decisions, and endless anticipation had all led to this moment. She had dreamed of it since she was a little girl, imagining a wedding filled with love, laughter, and a bright future by Daniel's side. Her mother, a kind woman with gentle eyes and a quiet strength, entered the room carrying a small tray of tea. "Emma, you look beautiful," she said softly, smiling. Her voice trembled slightly, betraying the pride she felt and the nostalgia of seeing her daughter all grown up. Emma smiled back, her nerves bubbling under the surface. She had always been close to her mother, and it felt comforting to have her there, holding her hand and smoothing out the smallest wrinkles in the dress. Outside, the village was alive with activity. Friends and relatives had arrived early, their laughter and chatter filling the air. Colorful flowers lined the streets, and the horses in the stable neighed softly, sensing the excitement. Everything seemed perfect, a picture of happiness waiting to unfold. Emma's father, a quiet man with a reserved smile, peeked into the room to check on her. His presence, though understated, gave her strength. He handed her a small handkerchief embroidered with her initials. "For later," he said with a wink, not realizing how much she would need it sooner than expected. Emma took a deep breath and tried to steady herself. She thought of Daniel, her fiancé, and the life they had imagined together. He had been charming, attentive, and until recently, devoted. Their love had seemed perfect, like a storybook romance that would last forever. She remembered their first date under the stars, the first time he held her hand, and the many promises he had made. Each memory brought a smile to her face, but it also made her heart pound nervously. Today was the day they would make those promises official, the day their lives would truly begin together. As the wedding ceremony was about to start, Emma walked down the aisle with her father. The village church, a small white building with a bell tower, was decorated with white roses and ribbons. Friends and family lined the pews, faces beaming with joy and anticipation. The music began, soft and melodic, carrying a sense of hope and celebration. Emma's heart swelled with emotion as she approached the altar, expecting to see Daniel waiting for her, ready to begin their life together. But when she reached the front, the reality hit her like a cold wave. Daniel was not there. The space where he should have stood was empty. Emma froze, her smile faltering, her hands gripping the bouquet so tightly that her fingers turned white. She blinked, hoping it was some cruel trick of the mind, but the empty spot remained. Whispers began to ripple through the crowd, confused and concerned glances exchanged among the guests. Her father's hand tightened around hers, a silent question in his eyes. Emma's throat felt dry, words caught in her mouth that she couldn't say. Panic and disbelief surged through her. Where could he be? Why would he not show up for their wedding? She scanned the room, desperate for any explanation, but there was none. The minutes stretched endlessly, each one heavier than the last. Her mother moved to her side, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder, but even that could not ease the sharp sting of betrayal cutting through her chest. Guests murmured among themselves, some offering supportive smiles, others clearly embarrassed or confused. Emma felt as if the ground beneath her had disappeared, leaving her suspended in a moment of pure heartbreak. After what felt like an eternity, a small note was passed to her. With trembling hands, she unfolded it and read the words scrawled in a familiar hand. "I can't do this. I'm sorry. I'm not the man you think I am." The words were brief but devastating. Emma's knees weakened, and she had to clutch her father's arm to stay upright. The man she had trusted, loved, and dreamed of spending her life with had abandoned her in front of everyone she cared about. The note did not explain why, and perhaps that was worse than any reason could have been. It left a vacuum, a sense of incomprehensible loss that wrapped around her heart. Tears streamed down her face as she tried to steady herself. Some guests rushed forward with hugs and words of comfort, while others awkwardly gave space, unsure of how to help. Emma could barely recognize the sounds of the room. They seemed distant, muffled, and unreal. Her mind raced, trying to understand, to make sense of something that had no sense. She thought about the months of planning, the little details they had chosen together, the promises and shared dreams, all vanished in a heartbeat. Her wedding day had turned into a nightmare. Emma left the church quietly, moving through the village streets as the sun climbed higher. The laughter, music, and cheerful voices faded behind her. She wandered past familiar houses, past the fields where she had played as a child, past the river where she had spent summer afternoons dreaming of her future. The world felt heavy, gray, and silent. With each step, the pain pressed deeper into her chest. Her mind replayed Daniel's note over and over, the words echoing, relentless and cruel. She wanted to scream, to shout, to demand answers, but no sound would come. Eventually, Emma found herself at the edge of the countryside, a place she often went to think when life felt overwhelming. The tall grass swayed gently in the breeze, and the distant mountains were bathed in golden light. The quiet was both comforting and isolating. She sank to the ground, pressing her hands into the soil, feeling the coolness against her skin. The air smelled of earth and flowers, a reminder that life continued even when hers felt shattered. Emma allowed herself to cry fully for the first time, tears flowing freely, unrestrained by the presence of anyone else. She felt a mix of anger, sorrow, and disbelief. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the fields, Emma sat alone, wrapped in her thoughts. She remembered the excitement of planning her life with Daniel, the laughter they had shared, the dreams they had built together. Now all that remained was emptiness, a silence that pressed heavily against her chest. She felt abandoned not only by him, but by the life she had imagined, the future she had trusted would come true. For hours she stayed there, watching the sky turn from gold to pink to deep purple. The stars began to appear, faint at first, then bright against the night. The quiet night seemed to whisper to her, as if urging her to breathe, to keep moving forward, even when it seemed impossible. Emma realized that she had no choice but to face this heartbreak, to confront the betrayal, and to find some way to survive. But in that moment, the thought of moving on felt distant and unreachable. As she finally stood to leave, brushing the dirt from her dress, Emma felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and resolve. She had been crushed, humiliated, and left alone, but a small spark of determination flickered inside her. She might not understand why Daniel had abandoned her, and she might not be ready to forgive him, or even herself. But she knew one thing: she had to keep going. Life would not stop, and somehow she would find a way to face it. With the moon rising high above, Emma walked slowly back toward the village, each step a mix of pain and courage. She did not know what the next day would bring, nor did she know how she would begin to rebuild her shattered heart. But she knew, deep down, that she could not remain in that place of despair forever. Somewhere in the quiet night, among the fields and the stars, she sensed that her life was not over. It had only begun to take a new shape, one she could not yet see, but one that would eventually lead her forward. Emma walked slowly along the quiet country path, her dress still smudged with dirt from where she had sat in the fields. The moonlight reflected off the gentle ripples of the nearby river, casting a soft glow over everything. She felt hollow inside, as if the world had lost its color. The events of the wedding, the empty altar, the note from Daniel, the stares and whispers, replayed endlessly in her mind. Each memory stung, and she struggled to breathe through the tight knot of grief that pressed against her chest. As she wandered, she barely noticed the sounds of the night, the chirping of crickets, the rustle of leaves in the breeze, the soft call of an owl from the distant trees. She was so consumed by her thoughts that the world around her felt distant, almost unreal. She had no destination, only a need to move, to escape the memories that clung to her like shadows. Suddenly, she heard the soft crunch of hooves on the dirt path behind her. She froze, her heart beating faster, unsure who or what was approaching. From the darkness emerged a figure on horseback, tall and steady, his silhouette outlined by the faint light of the rising moon. As he drew closer, Emma could see the details more clearly. A rugged face partially hidden by a wide-brimmed hat, strong shoulders, and the calm, measured movements of someone used to the land. He looked like he belonged to this place in a way that she had never quite felt. The man reined in his horse a few feet away, allowing it to stand quietly, its breath visible in the cool night air. "Evening," he said, his voice low but warm, carrying a sense of authority and kindness. "You shouldn't be out here all alone." Instead, she found a quiet concern, a gentle curiosity that did not demand anything from her. I just needed to be alone," she replied softly, her voice trembling. She was not used to speaking to strangers, especially not in her current state of vulnerability. I'm trying to think." "Name's Luke," he said, tipping his hat slightly. "I live just down the path on the other side of the river. You look like you've had a rough day." So she said nothing more, simply staring at him, unsure if she could trust anyone again. Luke dismounted from his horse, moving with quiet confidence. He knelt briefly to pat the animal before standing and taking a cautious step toward her. "You don't have to talk if you don't want to," he said gently. "But sometimes, it helps to have someone to just sit with." The idea of sitting with a stranger, sharing even a part of her pain, seemed foreign. Yet beneath her fear, a small part of her, deep inside, longed for comfort. She had felt so alone, abandoned not just by Daniel, but by the life she had thought she would have. Seeing this man, calm and steady, standing there without judgment, stirred a fragile thread of hope in her heart. For a long moment she said nothing. Finally she whispered, I don't know what to do." They sat together, a respectful distance apart, and for a time the only sounds were the rustling of leaves and the gentle flowing of water. There was no pressure, no expectation, just the quiet presence of someone who cared enough to sit beside her. After a while, Luke spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper, almost a part of the night itself. "Your future belongs to me now." It was not a claim on her heart or her life, but a quiet vow to stand beside her as she rebuilt it. For reasons she could not explain, those words gave her a small measure of relief. She had spent the day abandoned, rejected, left with nothing but heartbreak. Now, for the first time, someone seemed to care, not for what she could give, but simply for who she was. Over the next few days, Luke became a steady presence in Emma's life. He didn't rush her or push her to speak about Daniel. Instead, he offered quiet companionship, helping her with small tasks and teaching her little things about life on the ranch. Emma was surprised at how much she needed these small gestures, how much they helped her feel grounded and safe. She discovered that Luke had a way of noticing the things that hurt her without making her explain them. He taught her to ride a horse, starting with short walks around the fields. At first, she was clumsy, unsure of her balance and tense from fear. But Luke's calm guidance and patient encouragement helped her feel more confident. "One step at a time," he said, smiling. "You don't have to rush." Each day she grew stronger, learning to trust not just him, but herself. Emma also began helping with chores on the ranch, something she had never imagined doing. She fed the animals, repaired fences, and even helped with harvesting the small crops Luke grew. With each task, she felt a sense of accomplishment, a reminder that she was capable and resilient. Her confidence began to return quietly, like the first rays of sunlight breaking through a stormy sky. As they spent more time together, Emma learned about Luke's life. He was a man of few words, but when he spoke, his words carried weight and wisdom. He had grown up in this village, learning the ways of the land from his father. Life had taught him to be patient, to value hard work, and to care for those who could not care for themselves. Emma admired him not for his strength or skill, but for the way he treated others, with respect, fairness, and quiet kindness. One evening, as the sun set over the hills, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Emma and Luke sat on a small wooden fence overlooking the fields. The air was cool, filled with the scent of earth and grass. Emma realized she hadn't cried in hours, hadn't felt the sharp sting of despair that had consumed her at the wedding. She looked at Luke, and for the first time in days, a genuine smile appeared on her face. "You really are different from anyone I've ever met," she said softly, almost to herself. Luke glanced at her, his expression unreadable but kind. "Different isn't always bad," he replied. "Sometimes it's what you need the most." For the first time since the heartbreak, she began to imagine a life where she could feel happiness again. Over the following weeks, their bond grew stronger. Luke never pushed her to share her past or her pain, but he was always there when she needed support. He offered advice when she asked, shared stories of the land, and helped her find joy in small, everyday moments. Emma found herself laughing again, sometimes at the most unexpected things: a playful calf, a clumsy horse, or Luke's quiet, understated humor. One day, as they worked together repairing a fence near the river, Emma looked at Luke and realized something profound. The man who had appeared in her darkest moment, who had quietly offered his presence and patience, had become a beacon of hope. She had been abandoned, left alone to face a world that seemed cruel and unkind. But now, through Luke's steady support, she could feel the stirrings of a new life, one built not on betrayal or fear, but on trust, care, and genuine connection. Luke noticed her gaze and smiled faintly. "You're stronger than you think," he said. "And you're not alone anymore." Luke had not taken her pain away, but he had shown her that it was possible to face it, to move through it, and to imagine a life beyond heartbreak. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in deep shades of red and gold, Emma felt a quiet sense of peace. She still carried the memory of betrayal, the sting of humiliation, and the shadow of loss, but she also carried something new, a glimmer of hope, a feeling of being cared for, and the beginnings of trust in someone else again. She realized that life, even after heartbreak, could offer unexpected kindness, and sometimes, in the most surprising moments, someone could appear to change everything. The days grew longer and warmer as spring settled over the countryside. Emma had begun to feel a subtle shift within herself, a quiet strength she hadn't noticed before. The heartbreak from her wedding day still lingered, a shadow in the corners of her mind, but it no longer consumed her every thought. With Luke by her side, she discovered that life could still hold beauty, even after betrayal. Each morning, Emma rose early, the sun spilling gold across the hills. She had taken to helping Luke on his ranch, learning the routines that had defined his life for years. The work was hard, sometimes exhausting, but Emma found that it gave her a sense of purpose she hadn't felt since her dreams with Daniel had been shattered. Feeding the animals, mending fences, planting small crops, it was simple, honest work, but it helped her reconnect with the world and with herself. Luke watched her carefully, noticing every small success and every stumble. He never criticized her, only guided her with patience and quiet encouragement. "Take your time," he would say when she struggled with a task. "There's no rush. You'll get it." And slowly, day by day, Emma began to feel capable again. She realized she was stronger than she had given herself credit for. It was during these moments of shared work that their bond deepened. They didn't always speak. Sometimes they simply worked side by side, the rhythm of the ranch and the natural world around them providing its own conversation. But when they did talk, their conversations were honest, gentle, and meaningful. Luke told her about his childhood, the lessons he had learned from his father, and the ways he had found to survive hardships. Emma shared little by little, never forcing herself to speak more than she was ready for. Luke listened, never judging, simply acknowledging her feelings and offering quiet wisdom. One afternoon, as they worked repairing a section of fencing near the old barn, Emma paused to catch her breath. Sweat ran down her face, and her arms ached from the labor. Luke handed her a bottle of water, and their hands brushed for a brief moment. Emma felt a spark of something unfamiliar, an awareness of Luke that went beyond gratitude or friendship. She quickly looked away, trying to dismiss the feeling. She was still fragile, still learning to trust herself and others after being abandoned. But Luke seemed to notice. He smiled faintly, not teasing or pressing her, only acknowledging the quiet connection between them. "You're doing well," he said simply. Better than you think. She realized that Luke had not only helped her survive her heartbreak, but had also shown her that she could thrive again. He made her believe, slowly, that life could hold joy, laughter, and even love, without the shadow of betrayal hanging over her. Over time, Emma began to explore parts of herself she had neglected. She returned to hobbies she had loved in her youth, such as painting and small crafts. Luke encouraged her creativity, providing space and quiet support without ever making her feel pressured. She even started selling a few of her handmade items at the village market, something she never thought she would do alone. Each small success reinforced the sense that she could build a new life, one that belonged to her. One evening, after a long day of work on the ranch, Emma and Luke sat by the riverbank, watching the sun set over the hills. The sky was painted in brilliant shades of orange and pink, the reflections shimmering in the water. Emma leaned back on her hands, letting the warmth of the sun settle into her bones. For the first time in months, she felt a sense of peace, a quiet contentment she had feared she might never know again. "You seem different these days," Luke said, breaking the silence. "Stronger, calmer, like you found something that was missing." I think I have," she admitted. "I never thought I could feel this way again, not after everything." She gestured vaguely toward the distant village, the place where her dreams had been shattered. "I was so broken." "It's about learning to live again, and you're doing it." She felt a quiet pride in herself, a feeling she had not experienced in months. As the weeks turned into months, their relationship evolved naturally. They shared meals, worked the land together, and spent quiet evenings under the stars. Luke never rushed Emma or demanded anything from her. He offered companionship, trust, and respect, the kind of steady, patient love that could nurture a fragile heart back to life. Emma, in turn, began to open herself up in ways she had not thought possible. She trusted him with her thoughts, her fears, and her dreams. She laughed again, sometimes spontaneously, a sound that brought a smile to Luke's face. One day, Emma decided to confront the lingering pain of her past. She visited the village, walking through streets she had avoided since the wedding. The faces of neighbors and old friends turned toward her, some offering kind smiles, others whispering behind their hands. She felt a twinge of anxiety but pressed on. She needed to reclaim her space, to show herself that she could walk among others without fear or shame. When she returned to the ranch, she felt lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. Luke was waiting for her, leaning against the barn door with a small smile. "How was it?" he asked casually. Emma shrugged, a genuine smile forming on her lips. "It was okay," she said. "Not as scary as I thought. I think I'm finally letting go of what happened. You deserve a life that's yours, full of happiness and respect." One evening, as they sat by the fireplace in Luke's modest cabin, the warmth of the fire reflecting off the wooden walls, Emma found herself reflecting on how far she had come. She had gone from despair and heartbreak to finding a new sense of purpose, confidence, and even the beginnings of love. She realized that Luke had not only saved her from her darkest moments, but had also taught her to trust again, to believe in her own strength, and to embrace life without fear. Luke looked at her, sensing the change in her demeanor. "You've come a long way," he said softly. "I'm proud of you." "I couldn't have done it without you," she admitted. "You've shown me how to live again." Emma realized that healing was not about someone else fixing her. It was about finding the strength within herself, guided by someone who truly cared. Luke had been that guiding presence, patient and unwavering, and she felt a deep gratitude that went beyond words. As spring gave way to summer, Emma and Luke continued to build their lives together, step by step. They faced small challenges, repairs on the ranch, unexpected storms, and moments of doubt, but they faced them together. Each challenge strengthened their bond, showing Emma that trust, patience, and respect could create a foundation stronger than any heartbreak. And in the quiet moments when the work was done and the world seemed still, Emma felt a growing sense of love for Luke. It was not the fiery passion she had imagined with Daniel, but something steadier, deeper, and more enduring. She realized that true love was not about grand gestures or perfect plans. It was about trust, understanding, and being there for each other, even in the most ordinary moments. One night as they lay under the stars on a blanket in the fields, Emma turned to Luke, her heart full of emotion. "I never thought I could feel this way again," she whispered. Luke's hand found hers, fingers intertwining. "You deserve to," he said softly, "and I'll be here every step of the way." She had been abandoned, betrayed, and broken, but she had found a path forward. With Luke by her side, she had discovered strength, trust, and the beginnings of a love that promised a future brighter than anything she had dared to imagine. And for the first time in a long time, she felt truly hopeful. Summer was in full bloom, and the countryside was alive with warmth, sunlight, and the gentle hum of life. Emma had come a long way since the day she had been abandoned at the altar. The sadness and betrayal that once consumed her heart had softened, replaced by strength, purpose, and a quiet hope. She had learned to rely on herself, to trust again, and to embrace the small joys that made life worth living. And Luke had been by her side through it all, a steady presence, patient, caring, and unwavering. The morning air was crisp as Emma stepped out into the yard, carrying a basket of fresh eggs from the henhouse. The smell of hay and earth filled her senses, a comforting reminder of how far she had come. Luke was already outside, tending to the horses, his movements confident and calm. He looked up and smiled as she approached. "Morning," he said simply, "ready for another day." "Always," she replied, her voice light and cheerful. She had grown to appreciate these simple routines, the work, the animals, the quiet moments shared without the need for words. Each day brought a sense of purpose and with it, a growing sense of belonging. They worked together in harmony, repairing fences, watering the crops, and caring for the animals. Luke taught her techniques she hadn't known before, guiding her patiently when she struggled and praising her efforts when she succeeded. There was no rush, no pressure, just steady progress and the quiet satisfaction of accomplishment. Emma felt a sense of pride she hadn't experienced since her childhood, a feeling that her life was truly her own. As the day progressed, they took a break by the river, sitting on the grass with the sun warm on their faces. Emma watched the water ripple gently over the rocks, the reflection of the sky dancing on the surface. She felt peaceful, grounded, and content in a way she hadn't thought possible just months ago. "You've changed so much," Luke said quietly, glancing at her. "I see it every day. Stronger, more confident, happier." She had reclaimed her life, step by step, with courage, patience, and guidance. And now she was ready to face the future, whatever it might hold. The days continued to pass in a rhythm that felt both comforting and energizing. Emma and Luke worked on the ranch, explored the countryside, and shared quiet evenings under the stars. They celebrated small victories together, the repair of a broken fence, a successful harvest, or a calf born healthy and strong. Each moment reinforced their connection, building trust and affection naturally, without haste or expectation. One afternoon, a sudden storm swept across the fields, dark clouds rolling in quickly and rain beginning to pour. Emma and Luke scrambled to secure the animals and bring in supplies. The wind whipped through the trees and the thunder rumbled across the hills, but they worked together seamlessly, each movement coordinated and precise. When the storm finally passed, they sat on the porch of the cabin, soaked but exhilarated. Emma laughed, a sound full of joy and relief, as Luke handed her a warm blanket. "You're soaked," he said with a grin, "but I like seeing you like this, alive. And I'll always be here to remind you of it." She realized that she had weathered her own storm, and now, standing with Luke, she could see a future that was bright, hopeful, and full of possibilities. In the weeks that followed, Emma continued to explore her independence and creativity. She expanded her small craft business, selling her handmade items at the village market and online. Luke supported her quietly, never interfering, always encouraging. She found that the more she invested in herself, the more confident and fulfilled she felt. Her life was no longer defined by past pain but by her own choices, her own efforts, and her growing sense of purpose. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills and the stars began to emerge, Emma and Luke sat by the river, watching the water flow. They had been quiet for some time, simply enjoying each other's presence. Finally, Emma spoke, her voice soft but certain. "Luke, I think I'm ready to let go completely of the past," she said. "I'm ready to move forward, to embrace what comes next. Your future is yours, Emma, and I'll be here, sharing it with you if you want me to." She squeezed his hand, a silent affirmation of her trust and affection. As summer turned to early autumn, Emma and Luke faced new challenges together. A sudden illness among the livestock threatened their farm, and a harsh storm damaged part of the barn. But each time, they confronted the difficulties as a team, their partnership growing stronger with every obstacle. Emma discovered that she was capable of handling adversity, and Luke learned to rely on her judgment and courage. Together, they were a formidable team, built on trust, respect, and shared experience. Through these trials, Emma's love for Luke deepened. It was not the impulsive, passionate love she had imagined with Daniel, but something steadier, richer, and more enduring. She admired his strength, his patience, and his quiet wisdom. She appreciated the way he encouraged her independence, never seeking to control her but always supporting her. And most importantly, she trusted him fully, a gift she had once thought impossible after being abandoned. One evening, as they watched the sunset from the hill behind the ranch, Emma leaned against Luke's shoulder. The sky was ablaze with color, and the world seemed to hold its breath in that perfect moment. She realized that she had found a life far more beautiful and fulfilling than the one she had imagined with Daniel. She had been broken, abandoned, and hurt, but she had emerged stronger, wiser, and ready to embrace love that was real, supportive, and lasting. Luke turned to her, his eyes reflecting the colors of the sunset. "Emma," he said softly, "your future belongs to me now." In the following months, Emma and Luke built a life together filled with trust, joy, and purpose. They expanded the ranch, nurtured the animals, and strengthened their community connections. Emma continued her craft business, gaining recognition for her skill and creativity. She had reclaimed her life entirely, building it on her own terms, guided by the love and support of someone who respected and cherished her. And through it all, they shared quiet moments, watching the stars, riding horses across the fields, tending to the land, or simply sitting together in silence. Each moment reinforced the bond they had forged, a connection rooted in mutual respect, trust, and love. Emma realized that happiness was not always loud or dramatic. It was steady, comforting, and enduring, and it was something she had finally found. On a particularly beautiful evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned to shades of purple and gold, Emma stood beside Luke, taking in the view. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought her here, the heartbreak, the struggle, the moments of doubt, and she understood that every step had led her to this place of healing and fulfillment. Luke turned to her, smiling faintly. "You've come so far," he said, "and I'm proud of you every single day. I just walked beside you." As the stars began to twinkle overhead and the night settled peacefully over the ranch, Emma leaned into Luke, feeling safe, loved, and truly alive. She had weathered the storm of her past, and now she stood ready to embrace the life she had chosen, a life full of hope, happiness, and enduring love.